it's 2 or 3 hours a day on LinkedIn at least. If you want to succeed and stand out above the noise, especially because there are clients that will take advantage of you. And it happened to me.
Hey Matt, thank you for joining my podcast. How are you today?
I'm good, Rita. Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure.
Great, it's pleasure is all mine. I saw your content on LinkedIn. I actually seen it like every day, and I love what you're posting. And I got very curious about your journey on LinkedIn. So let's start with tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So, look, to keep the long story short, I used to work in the restaurant industry, nothing related to LinkedIn. When I was in college, I studied business. And while I was in college, they told us we needed to set up a LinkedIn profile because that's what you had to do to get a job, right? And so I did that, but I'm from Guatemala, and in Guatemala, LinkedIn is you use LinkedIn specifically for that, to get a job, but you don't really use it as a social media platform. This was 2008, 2009. So I guess at that time, that was what LinkedIn was all about, right? It was just hiring, recruiting, that type of thing. So I ended up working, like, graduating from college. I went to work in the restaurant industry because I love to cook and I love to eat. So it was kind of like what I wanted to do. But after I opened my restaurant, I worked for other restaurants, and after a while, to be honest, I kind of like got burnt out a little bit, and it was not the life that I wanted to live. It was too demanding. So I decided, okay, let's look at what other options I had. And my sister-in-law, she was working with clients in the US from Guatemala, just, doing outsourced services. So she was providing VA services basically to clients in the US. And she started to tell me about that. And like it blew my mind. I had no idea that was actually a thing and that there was even a market for that. So she gave me a little bit of her experience, and I said, okay, I studied business. I probably have, I've been working for this many years. I probably have some skills that I can offer to people in the US as well. And what I really liked about it is that the flexibility that type of job gives you. In Guatemala, we're in a similar time zone as in the US. So it's you're not kind of like working during the night or anything crazy. And you're working from home. You are, it's a it was kind of like the lifestyle I was looking for after working, spending, 16-hour days in restaurants and all of that. So what I did is I just started thinking, okay, how can I get clients, right? Like, how can I get in touch with people? I just started reading blogs, and LinkedIn was the platform that came up all the time on those blogs. So I just started. I said, okay, let me find kind of like my target audience on LinkedIn. Let me reach out to them and see what happens. And to make it short is I did cold outreach with like 50 people on LinkedIn. That landed me a few kind of like project jobs where I just worked on a project and that was it. But then one lady from the US, she actually hired me for her marketing agency, and she did LinkedIn consulting. So this was 2017, and that was when I got really involved into LinkedIn and understanding how you can use LinkedIn as a marketing channel, not just as a channel to, get a job or get hired. So I learned from her. I worked for her for a couple of years. Then I started working with another company, which is a software company, and I was doing their whole marketing. So I was their marketing manager. I still work with them to this day. They are now one of my clients. And that's where I learned to use LinkedIn to market the software that they were selling, but they also did some client work, kind of like agency style. So I also worked with clients helping them. So I got to see, both sides of basically how to use LinkedIn. Um, yeah, that's how I learned it, and I've been doing that for many years now. But only this year in January, as it usually happens, you start doing something for clients because they are paying you to do it, but you oftentimes neglect to do it for yourself, like follow your own advice, right? So I never was that active on LinkedIn. I created content, once a month or so. Just whenever we were doing a webinar or something, I tried to promote it on LinkedIn. But this year I said, okay, it's enough. I need to get serious about my own personal brand on LinkedIn. And I just started posting on January the 2nd, posting every day, sharing what I was learning, and just, excuse me, trying to be valuable and to bring good ideas to people. And yeah, it's been a journey so far because in 5.5 months, I've grown a decent audience on LinkedIn, and the engagement and the community has been amazing. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
Wow, that's an amazing story. It was really a great shift from like one industry, like you working with your hands, and then another one where you need to actually work online and think about what you need to do in order to promote a specific product. Totally 180 degrees
Yeah,
switch. It's amazing. And it's also interesting that the platform of choice for you was LinkedIn, because every time I speak to people, they think that LinkedIn is that scary place and it's complicated. And when freelancers are starting like to do marketing, they usually start from Fiverr or Upwork. Have you used any
yeah.
of these platforms as well?
Yeah, so it's funny because I applied to Upwork before I started using LinkedIn because that was the other place that everyone was mentioning, right? Fiverr wasn't that famous back then. It was more Upwork, but they rejected me, and because they said I didn't have any in like my skills were too similar to too many of the users they already had. So it was like we will need more of that. So they rejected me, and I just said, okay, I don't want to be working. And I guess that's what made me shift to LinkedIn is I said I don't want to be working with the middleman. Like if I work with Upwork, they are gonna they're gonna define if I am successful or not. Whereas if I go directly with the client, as long as I can close the client and I can convince them that I can help them, then I'm good. I don't have to deal with a platform and some random algorithm rejecting me or not showing my projects or whatever, right?
Yeah, that's actually an amazing idea. Like, did you have any strategies to like finding and talking to clients? Because you said you send them
Yeah.
cold emails, like messages. So, did you have anything specific, or you just worked on it while you, well, on the way?
Yeah, sure. No, I did kind of like had a strategy, and it was very empiric. I just, I said, okay, I have this idea of how I can approach them, and let's just give it a try and see what happens. So I did a couple of things that worked really well for me. The first one was I tried to target people that were not top level executives at big companies. I guess overall, what I tried to do is understand which type of people are likely to hire some random guy in Guatemala that's messaging them over on LinkedIn, And that was my whole approach. And the thing is, I guess it served me well, and that's what I teach people these days is that you have to understand like everything needs to align. Your goal needs to align with the audience you're trying to target, and your offer needs to align with your goal and with the audience you're trying to target. So everything works together. My offer was myself, my knowledge, but I didn't have any credibility. I had never worked, remotely or online or anything like that. Of course, I knew, I had a basic understanding of the platforms, and I kind of like was able to figure them out on my own. But I had no one, I had no testimonials, no one that I could say, oh, I have worked with Rita, for example, or whoever it was. So I started approaching small business owners, just people that were running a large enough business where they could hire someone, but they were struggling because maybe they were wearing too many different hats. And that's who I try to identify, because obviously that I thought, okay, these people have a pain point. They are trying to do too many things at once. If I offer them my help, kind of like my initial offer was more in line of not marketing, but project management. So I was like, look, I can help you with managing your clients, managing your projects, managing if you already have employees, help you communicate with them and all that stuff. So I just try to, and that's what I loved about LinkedIn, that you can, compare to Facebook or Instagram or any other platform, on LinkedIn, you can really see someone's profile and have a good idea if their business is a small business or a bigger business. You can also see, so you can even see how many employees they have. So you can see what work they do. So it was kind of like the perfect place to learn about the audience. So I didn't even pay for Sales Navigator. I didn't even know Sales Navigator existed. Just went to LinkedIn, my free LinkedIn account, and I just started, searching. There's the search bar. I just said, okay, let me search for some keywords, see what comes up, and I just started. I spent, a big chunk of time every day just looking at profiles and trying to understand, okay, this person is the right fit for me. And then I
Wow.
just yeah. And then I learned, what I learned then is that you can't cold outreach people directly on LinkedIn. You have to connect with them first. So I was like, no, this is going to slow me down too much. Well, the other thing that I didn't mention in my story is that I actually resigned from my previous job before doing this. So I didn't have pressure because at the time I was living with my mom, so it was not like I was, super stressed about money, but I had to pay for my car and my things, so it was some pressure. And of course, I didn't want to be, 8 months without a job. So I wanted, I say that because I wanted to be fast. I didn't want to have to connect with someone first and then have a conversation with them and then report and then only then see if we are a good fit to work together. So what I did is I said, okay, I have to figure out how to get these people's email addresses. So I had a few tactics there to find people emails from LinkedIn. I used some tools and just logic thinking, I guess. If they have a company, I checked if they had a website, and usually if it's a small company, your website is something like Rita at company.com, right? So I just it's
Yeah.
like that logical thinking. I use that, and then I started sending cold emails. And then the other thing that I kind of like thought, okay, I have a problem. If some random guy from Guatemala is sending me an email, I'm just gonna delete it, right? So it needs to grab people's attention. It needs to be strong enough for them to pay attention, and it needs to have value for them. So I did something that some people think is bad advice, but to be honest, at the time, it worked out really well for me, and it's what brought me to where I'm at right now. So I would totally recommend it. Is I offer to work for free. So what I did is in the email, my subject line literally was, I don't remember the exact words, but I still have that email somewhere. But it was something like, "We will work 24 hours for you for free." That was like the subject line, and I wanted to grab their attention, and I said, okay, 24 hours. That's like, if I have nothing else to do, so I can do that. That's 2 days of work if I really focus on something. So that's not too bad. And if after 2 days I can get someone to see that I have skills and that I have something valuable to bring, maybe they will hire me. And then if not, I'll just work with someone else. And but I just spent 2 days. I don't have to wait to send connection requests and the whole back and forth of, building a relationship and all that stuff. Um, so I did that, and the majority of people didn't even reply to my email, but some did, and one of them, like I said, some of them gave me projects. Like we just worked for the 2 days, and then they paid me after that, but just for specific projects. But one of them actually told me, look, like I do need someone from this lady I was mentioning. She said, look, I do need someone from my marketing agency. Let's do a trial run and see how it goes. And yeah, I worked for her for 2 years, and it was I even flew to the States to work with her together. So it was a great experience, and it was all from that initial cold outreach.
Well, that's really amazing approach. Like you've been working hard and you've been determined, and in the end, I think if you see, I see it as a successful story. Like it's a success,
Sure.
but you worked very hard to actually get it there.
Yeah, for
And
sure. And
right now,
what?
yeah, yeah.
Sorry,
So go ahead.
what I was saying is that
Uh,
when previously I said that some people think working for free is bad advice, I do get it, and I think it's not for everyone. And I think as you get a little bit more established, you should avoid doing that, especially because there are clients that will take advantage of you. And it happened to me. Some of the clients I worked with, they just kind of like told me they would hire me, and then they never replied to my emails, and they kind of like took advantage of it. But um, I think that when you have zero credibility, especially when you're approaching someone online where you don't know the other person, you kind of like working for free is a good way to stand out and to differentiate yourself. So, and overall, I guess the advice is always think about how can you stand out, right? Because there's plenty of people looking for jobs. Why should you be the one that gets it? So that's kind of like the advice that I got from that.
No, definitely, like what you've been telling me so far, like without any credibility, that's a good approach. And eventually, you did work your way up and get some projects, get some experience, get some, references, and so on. So that's where you start when you are starting from zero, and that's all right.
That's right.
Like it can
That's
work.
right. That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
and right now, you are like considered a LinkedIn guru. How much time do you spend on the platform in order, to get projects or get things moving?
Yeah, sure. So look, that's a great question, and I think many people never think about that, and they think it's just about posting, a couple of times per week, and that's it. They're set. The reality is it takes a lot of time, and to specifically, and I know this because I track my time. I'm kind of like a tracking maniac. I track everything I do. So I spend, look, just on my account, obviously not counting clients or anything like that, just on my account, it's 2 or 3 hours a day on LinkedIn at least. And with that, I'm saying 1 hour of engagement at least, meaning leaving comments on other people's content, and 1 hour to 2 hours creating content. And the one that I'm trying, the hour I spent on engagement, that's really, I can't really improve that. The only way to improve it is if I do less engagement. But right now, I don't want to do that. I think 1 hour for me is still manageable, so I just do it. But the one that I'm trying to push down is the time I spent on content creation, and we can go deeper into that if you want. But uh, I think you can do some smart things to make content creation a part of your day-to-day activities. So that's where I'm focusing right now. And it's been only 5.5 months, so I'm also not judging myself too much. I also think many LinkedIn influencers or people preaching about LinkedIn give you the wrong idea where they say, oh, it only takes me 15 minutes a day, and that's all it takes. And the reality is, writing content is not easy. And of course, you can write something in 15 minutes, but once you get into the game of, okay, I don't just want to write something. I want to write something that resonates with people. I want to write something that helps me accomplish my goals, either getting people to sign up for a newsletter or to buy my product or to follow me or any goal you might have. That's where it gets a little bit more complicated, and it takes time. Like you have to invest the time. So, yeah, to answer your question, it's 3 hours per day, I would say.
Daily, or do you have like rest days on the weekends?
Yeah, so look, initially I was posting every single day, like even Saturdays and Sundays. Then, to be honest, I got into too many things at once. People, but it was more of like a different, not necessarily because of LinkedIn, but other stuff happening in my life that I just didn't post for 5 days in a row or something like that because I had to work with a client, or I recently moved to Croatia. My wife and I were living as digital nomads, so um, there was this whole planning and moving here and all that stuff. So I just I took days off. Now I'm testing a different approach where I'm posting several times per day. So I'm posting yesterday, I posted 3 times. Today I'm going to post 2 times. To, you know, and I'm doing it because I'm playing around to see how the algorithm behaves. And I'm also, I don't know if you're active on Twitter, but there's, on LinkedIn you kind of like post once a day and then you spend a lot of time on that post to make it as perfect as possible. On Twitter, you just put out random thoughts. Obviously, you can spend a lot of time on a tweet, but the idea of Twitter is it's a little bit more of a volume game, and you just put stuff out there to see what sticks. And once you identify what resonates with your audience, you then spend the time and double down on that specific idea to write something more like deeper. And I'm trying that Twitter approach on LinkedIn just to see what happens. And so far the algorithm, it's been interesting. The views have been good. Everyone says, oh, you should only post once a day. I have said that, I have posted about that, but the reality is the algorithm changes. And what gave me the idea is I saw someone else being super aggressive with the amount of content they're putting out, and they've grown a lot. So yeah, I just want to try it out.
Oh, that's super interesting. Please keep us posting how it goes.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, I only started this last week, so it's a little bit early to take, final conclusions. But yeah, I plan to post about it.
Okay, great. I make sure I follow and see what is your secret there and how it goes. Um, Also, I wanted to ask you, you said that you're spending like 2 hours on content creation. So it means you are creating all your content like live. If you want to post today you're going to spend about 2 hours to create it, or are you using some scheduling tools and scheduling for later?
Yeah, sure. So I definitely schedule, and I use Taplio to schedule my posts. I use it because I think it's a good tool, but I've used Buffer, and the native LinkedIn scheduling is also very good. So any of those works. I do schedule it. In an ideal world, I would like to have all my posts scheduled out at least once 1 week in advance. Meaning, if today is Tuesday, I want that all my posts from today until next Monday are already in there. That's in an ideal world, but we don't live in an ideal world. So, to be honest, look, today I early in the morning I finished the carousel that I'm gonna be posting later today, and the post for tomorrow I did them yesterday. So it's a little bit of a crazy process. I have found that blocking time off, for example, saying, okay, I'm gonna work hours on my LinkedIn content, like 8 hours straight on my LinkedIn content, really doesn't work for me. And I guess this is a personality thing for me. The thing is that I get like I need to reset my brain to get new ideas. And that's the other thing that I
Sure.
haven't mentioned about the time that I spend on content. Most of it is getting the idea and finding the right way to say something. Because writing the post maybe is easier for me. I've been writing for a while, not just for LinkedIn, but yeah, in newsletters and emails, and I like to write, so that comes a little bit more natural. It's more getting the idea because you can say anything, you can write anything, but are you saying the right thing? Are you saying it in the right way? That's the tricky part, and that's what takes me time because I need to look at other people's content to see what they are doing, to get ideas. Oh, this framework is interesting. Let me try that for my idea. That type of thing. And sometimes I have the other thing, and this is a little bit frustrating, is sometimes I have amazing ideas, but I don't have the right words to communicate it. And it's frustrating because you know that it's a good idea, it's good value, people will learn from it. But if you don't have the right way of communicating it, I park it because it's not just the idea, it's how people, how you get people's attention on that idea. So um yeah, going back, I'm kind of like going on a tangent here, but going back to your original question about the scheduling content, I look, I do a little bit of everything. I sometimes block a few hours to write my post. Sometimes I'm improvising, but usually what I try to avoid as much as possible is to not have a post at least a couple of hours before it's supposed to be live. So I like to have my post ready, at least 5 hours before I'm publishing it. Let's say that 5 hour rule, it's not a set rule, but what I mean is I like to have enough time because I feel that having pressure is good, but sometimes when it's too, like when you don't have enough time, you just come up with something that's not that great and you could have spent a little bit more time refining your hook or your ending or your call to action. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that's true. To make it perfect, and you always can improve something there,
yeah,
as every
yeah,
creator.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
that
it's a
that
fine
sounds
balance.
about right.
It's a tricky balance because you never want to be. I tend to be a perfectionist, and I try to avoid that because it's also not good. But you also want to have, if you want to succeed and stand out above the noise, you have to create something of value. Otherwise, you're just putting words out there and it's not, so that's kind of like the balance that you have to find.
Yeah, that's definitely true. What about post types? I see that you are posting mostly, well, text and rarely posting some images. Have you tried playing with that, or you don't see that algorithm really reacts in a different way to different posts?
Sure. So I will say, again, going back to the concept of the most important thing is the idea and how you communicate it. That's the secret. The format of the post is secondary. Of course, carousels overall get more visibility on LinkedIn. Images can also work really well, and it's just a matter of understanding that images are easy to understand and carousels are easy to consume. A text post takes a little bit more work because especially if you are not that experienced in writing for LinkedIn, if you write a big chunk of text, people are just not going to read it. So because it's too much effort. So the algorithm definitely favors carousels, but my most viral posts, number one has been a carousel. Number two and number three have been text posts only, no image, nothing. So I say that because you can, and that's what I like about LinkedIn. You can win with any sort of content really. Like it can be video, it can be carousels, it can be images, it can be text posts, any of those. If your idea is right and you're communicating it in the right way, it can win. So I've played around with images. I've played around with GIFs or GIFs, however you pronounce it.
Gifts. Yeah.
GIFs, yeah. Carousels. I played that. The one that I haven't played around with is video. Not because I just feel, for me, writing comes a little bit more natural, and video, for example, here we are having a conversation with the camera on and it's great and it's good. But creating video content is a whole different game. And to master it, yeah, I just don't want to get into that right now. I will probably in the future, but I don't want to mess with that right now. So I'm focusing on images and text posts, carousels. That's my thing. The one thing I'm testing out right now are polls. I don't know if you
Oh
remember
yeah.
or if you were, that poll like craziness that was happening on LinkedIn. I think it was 2 years ago or something. And I hated polls. Like it was too much. And people were asking all sorts of random crazy questions. But I think polls now still can give you nice attention. And again, it's not just a framework. It's how you use it.
Yeah, polls, for some reason, they are considered that they are getting more impressions on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn says it, well, themselves, and they are trying to decrease the amount of polls that you can post now or something like that because, well,
Mhm.
people are using them too much. But yes, algorithms react on polls better than on other type of content on LinkedIn right now. For
Yeah. Yeah, and a couple of years ago when the whole craziness was going on and kind of like at its peak, I saw polls like, business owners, like executives posting polls like, do you sleep with your socks on or off? And I was like no, like that's not the way. Like if you're building, of course you can do it. Like I'm not anyone to judge that because in the end, it's social media, so you do whatever you want, right? You use the platform however you want to use it. But if your goal is to drive business and get opportunities from LinkedIn, that's not going to do it for you. You're going to get impressions, but those impressions are not going to help you in any way. So what's the point? So I think there's a lot of opportunity in doing interesting thing with polls these days. For example, I did one the other day where I wasn't asking a question. I was testing my audience. I was giving them a quiz. I don't know if you saw this, but I posted because I sometimes post about copywriting tips and advice, because I write and that's it's part of growing on LinkedIn. So I post about that. And my poll was, which of these words is the weak word you should never use in copywriting? And then I gave four options, and one of them, three of them were correct and one of them was wrong. So it's kind of like a quiz. So I think that's a creative way, and it performed really well. It was my best performing post of last week, and it took me 10 minutes to write that, and it was great. Um, so I think there's opportunity in being a little bit more creative with polls, leveraging that increase of visibility, but do it the right way. Don't do it by asking, do you sleep with your socks on or off?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I would ask you this question. For someone who is just starting on the platform, well, what would be the one advice that you can give that person to start right now with LinkedIn?
Sure. I would say there's three things on LinkedIn. It's the three C's, I call them. It's connection requests, content, and comments. That's the three things. Depending on where you're at, you should focus more on one or the other. For someone that's just getting started, 100% focus on comments and connection requests. You can do content, and if you can do content, definitely do it. But the most important part for someone that has, 100 followers or something like that, connection requests is the best way to grow your initial tribe on LinkedIn. And I don't know why connection requests, like people are scared of connection requests. They think it's like, oh, I have to overthink it and it has to be perfect and that type of thing. And I guess it's because there's so many people doing it wrong where, they spam people
Oh
straight
yeah.
from the connection request. And that's the problem. But if what you're looking to do is simply connect with, people you find interesting, definitely go for it. And people always ask me what message should I send in the connection request, and I always tell them, look, either send no message or send something very simple. Like my message has been for the last 5 months. It has been, I would love to connect with you. That's it. That's everything I say. And of course, not everyone accepts me, but my acceptance rate is still pretty good. Um, and it's simple. I don't waste too much time about it with that. Of course, if you're looking to connect with someone that's super important to you because, you want them to be a client or you want them to be a partner or whatever, then you can spend a little bit more time with the actual message. But otherwise, my advice is focus on people that are active on the platform. You see them posting content, you see them leaving comments, you see them doing stuff every day on LinkedIn. Focus on them, connect with them. And one way to find them is simply go to some influencers' post, see the comment section, see who is leaving comments, and send them a message. I would advise not to tell them, oh, I saw your comment on that post and I thought it would be nice to connect, because too many people are doing that already. Just send them a connection request, and a big chunk of them are going to accept it. Be careful with LinkedIn limitations. So if you have a free account, especially, don't go too crazy with connection requests, but at least send 10 connection requests a day. Um, and then the other part is commenting. And my advice is create a list of 10, 20 people. It depends on how much time you have every day, but make a habit of leaving comments every day on those people's content. It's how you build a community. And without community, you're not going to get impressions on LinkedIn, or it's going to be very hard because that community will give you the initial engagement that you need on your content. And if you don't have initial engagement, even if it's great content, it's going to struggle to generate attention. So for someone that's getting started, that's super important. And of course, post content, but I would say focus, 70% of your energy on connection requests and comments, and 30% of your on your content. Post only a few times a week if you want. And as you start building that community, then you start shifting that balance. You spend then 50% of your energy on connection requests and comments, and 50% of your attention on creating better content. And for me right now, you saw that from when you asked me how much time I spent. I spent 1 hour engaging, but 2 hours creating content. So I flipped it, right? I flipped it. Now for me, it's 33% engagement and
That's
66% the content creation. So it depends on what stage you're in.
got it. That's amazing advice. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for taking your time and speaking to me.
Sure, I'm happy. I was happy to be here. This was great.